It was a calm and peaceful morning in Ouagadougou, the capital city of Burkina Faso. President Ibrahim Traoré sat behind his large wooden desk, sunlight filtering through the curtains as he carefully reviewed a thick stack of documents detailing the nation's progress in local policy initiatives. The atmosphere in the presidential office was focused, quiet, and orderly until the door swung open abruptly. His assistant, Marie, entered the room with urgency written all over her face. Her steps were quick, her expression tense. "Mr. President," she said, her voice slightly breathless and her eyes wide with a mix of excitement and nervousness. "You need to see this, right now." Startled by her tone, Traoré looked up, raising an eyebrow. It was unusual for Marie to interrupt a morning briefing unless it was something truly important. "What happened?" he asked, curiosity sharpening his voice. Without answering, Marie handed him a tablet. On the screen was a live broadcast from the United States. A press conference was underway. The crowd in the video was silent and attentive, focused on the man speaking on stage, former U.S. President Barack Obama. The moment was already monumental, but what came next left President Traoré stunned. "Burkina Faso," Obama said, his deep, commanding voice resonating through the auditorium, "is a powerful example of how small nations can lead big transformations. Under the leadership of President Ibrahim Traoré, the country is proving that self-reliance and dignity are not just ideals, but achievable realities." Traoré's breath caught in his throat. For a brief moment, the world around him faded. He blinked, processing the fact that Barack Obama had just spoken his name with such reverence on a global stage. He leaned closer, listening intently as Obama continued. "President Traoré has boldly rejected the outdated models of dependency and traditional foreign aid," Obama said, his tone resolute. "He is building a future based on mutual respect, on trust in the ability of his own people. That is true leadership." The audience in the United States erupted into thunderous applause. Behind Obama, a screen flashed images of real progress from Burkina Faso, photos of once barren lands now transformed into green fields, children smiling in modern classrooms, young engineers working with solar technology in rural areas. These weren't just statistics or government reports. They were living proof of a nation rising on its own terms. President Traoré lowered the tablet slowly, his hands trembling slightly, his heart pounding with disbelief and quiet pride. I didn't expect that," he murmured, shaking his head, still trying to grasp the weight of what he had just witnessed. Marie stood beside him, a smile spreading across her face. "Mr. President," she said, her voice trembling with emotion, "this is incredible. The entire world is watching. They're seeing the impact of what you've built." But Traoré remained silent for a moment longer. His eyes drifted out, the window, beyond the palace walls, as his mind turned to the millions of Burkinabe citizens whose daily efforts made such recognition possible. He knew this moment wasn't just about him. It was about the people, the farmers, teachers, engineers, and mothers building the nation day by day. At last he spoke, his voice quiet but full of conviction. "Marie," he said, "we need to respond, but not with ego or pride. We must answer this honor with gratitude and with humility." Marie nodded instantly, already pulling out her notepad to begin organizing a response. She understood deeply that this was more than a political moment. It was a historic opportunity for the country. Meanwhile, across the globe, Obama was wrapping up his speech. He looked straight into the camera and sent a message meant for one man, but heard by millions. "Ibrahim," he said, his voice steady and heartfelt, "if you are watching, know that your courage is inspiring many of us. Keep showing the world that Africa does not need to be saved. It needs to be respected." The speech instantly went viral. Social media platforms lit up with hashtags like "Respect for Africa" and "Leadership with Dignity." News outlets and commentators across continents began debating the meaning of sovereignty, the future of aid, and Africa's rightful place in global leadership. Back in Ouagadougou, President Traoré sat quietly, still absorbing the gravity of Obama's words. It was more than praise. It was a call to the world to recognize the dignity and strength of African nations charting their own paths. After a long pause, he turned to Marie again. "Prepare a press conference for tomorrow," he said firmly. "We must speak, not just to the international community, but to our own people. They need to know that this recognition belongs to them. This is their victory." Marie gave a determined nod, already making arrangements. She understood what this moment meant. It was a turning point. And President Traoré, with his calm resolve and deep humility, was ready to meet it with the dignity it deserved. "This is the work of our people," President Ibrahim Traoré declared, his voice calm but firm as he stood before a packed press room filled with local and international journalists. With quiet pride, he unveiled a bold new initiative, the Sovereign Future Program, a far-reaching effort aimed at scaling up the community-based development projects that had already begun to transform Burkina Faso. The goal, he explained, was to place power directly into the hands of the people, to enable villages, towns, and neighborhoods to develop sustainable solutions for their own challenges without becoming dependent on foreign donors or external agendas. This program, Traoré continued, pausing for emphasis, is not just about politics. It is a declaration, a statement of faith in our people. It is about proving that we as Africans can take care of ourselves. And most importantly, it is about showing the world that Africa does not need to be saved. It needs to be respected. The audience erupted into applause, particularly from local journalists who had witnessed firsthand the early impacts of community-driven reforms. They understood the depth of what was being proposed. Yet, not everyone in the room shared the same enthusiasm. Among the international press corps, there were visible signs of skepticism. A French journalist, raising his hand, asked bluntly, "Mr. President, how does Burkina Faso plan to implement these ambitious initiatives without external resources? Isn't this approach far too risky?" President Traoré met the question with a calm smile. "Everything we do in life involves risk," he replied. "But the greatest risk of all is accepting help that undermines our dignity and makes us dependent. We are not gambling with chance. We are investing in the strength, intelligence, and willpower of our people. And I have no doubt they will rise to the challenge." His answer resonated far beyond the walls of the press room. Within hours, clips from the press conference flooded social media platforms across Africa and beyond. The hashtags Respect for Africa, Sovereign Future, and Leadership with Dignity began trending worldwide. Heated debates broke out online and on international news channels. Commentators discussed the implications of a new kind of leadership, one rooted not in foreign aid, but in local empowerment and national pride. Meanwhile, behind the scenes in Ouagadougou, Traoré's administration had already moved into action. The Minister of Agriculture initiated consultations with community leaders to identify the most vulnerable rural areas where immediate support was needed. Simultaneously, Marie, the president's trusted assistant and a former social worker, traveled from village to village, not to give speeches, but to listen. She sat with farmers under mango trees, met with women's cooperatives in dusty community centers, and heard stories of daily struggle and determination. "This is going to change everything," said an elderly farmer named Issoufou during one such visit, gripping Marie's hand with emotion. "For the first time, we will be the ones deciding how to farm our land, how to feed our families. No more waiting for aid trucks, no more shame." Marie smiled, deeply moved. She knew that what they were building was more than a policy. It was a revolution of dignity, one farm, one school, one village at a time. President Obama's earlier statement, praising Traoré's leadership, continued to echo across international platforms. Global leaders, non-profit organizations, and academic circles began to take notice. Even ordinary citizens, touched by the story of a small African country standing tall on its own feet, joined the conversation. In many places, it shifted the narrative about what was possible in post-colonial Africa. In the United States, Obama's speech sparked a firestorm of debate. Supporters applauded his recognition of real African leadership and called for new models of international cooperation. Others, critics of his stance, argued that reducing foreign aid could destabilize vulnerable regions. Yet amid the political noise, one comment stood out during a live interview with an American analyst. "What President Traoré is doing," the analyst said, "is reminding the world of something we often forget. Real leadership doesn't mean handing out solutions. It means creating space for people to discover their own." Across Africa, Traoré's vision was being celebrated. Leaders in neighboring countries began exploring their own versions of the sovereign future model. In Nigeria, for instance, a youth movement launched a grassroots initiative called Value Your People, which aimed to fund sustainable agriculture projects in remote regions using local talent and innovation. In Ghana, university students organized forums to reimagine national development policies free from the influence of international donors. Back in Burkina Faso, President Traoré continued receiving updates on the growing momentum of the Sovereign Future program. One day, he traveled to a small village on the country's outskirts, where he met Fatou, a woman in her 40s who had transformed her life through the initiative. Fatou was now teaching carpentry skills to a group of local women. "Before," she told a local television crew, "I could barely feed my children, but now not only can I take care of them, I'm helping other women build better lives. It's all because President Traoré believed in us." Her words, and the images of women working with tools in a dusty workshop, went viral once again, fueling global admiration for Burkina Faso's self-determined path. Inside the presidential palace, the work continued. The Ministry of Agriculture partnered with universities to launch training programs in eco-farming, water management, and climate-resilient agriculture. Meanwhile, Marie oversaw new efforts to ensure that every community had access to electricity, clean water, and basic health care. Across the board, the spirit of the initiative was the same: invest in the people, not in dependency. During a strategy meeting, President Traoré looked around at his team, tired but inspired. "We're just getting started," he said, his eyes shining with quiet determination. "But we can already see it, the beginning of something extraordinary." Signs of profound transformation were everywhere, and this transformation was not merely economic, it was social, cultural, and most importantly, deeply human. Observing the vibrant energy of the crowd and the unfolding scenes around him, AID, journalist paused to write in his notebook. "Today, in Burkina Faso, I witness the future of an Africa that embraces its heritage, honors its heroes, and builds bridges of dignity, hope, and resilience for all its people." Fatou walked slowly toward the gleaming glass doors of the Innovation Center, her footsteps steady but her heart a storm of emotion. She had journeyed for hours from Bobo Dioulasso, her suitcase in one hand and the weight of her mother Marie's dreams in the other. Each step she took echoed with memories of late-night stories told by candlelight, of whispered encouragements during hardship, of the unwavering belief her mother held that her daughter would one day rise beyond limitations. Now, as Fatou approached the center, those dreams no longer felt distant. They were unfolding right before her eyes. The scene she encountered was unlike anything she had ever imagined. A large crowd had gathered, their faces alight with joy and anticipation, to celebrate the achievements of the Futuro Soberano initiative. a groundbreaking national program empowering communities through education, agriculture, and innovation. At the center of the gathering stood her mother, Marie, alive, radiant, and tearful, as she coordinated the final touches for the ceremony, just as President Traoré had once described. Her hands were steady, her eyes glistening with pride, and beside her stood Malik, the young boy who had once battled a dangerous fever in a rundown rural clinic. Now he wore a bright new sweater and held a display board showcasing photos of local community-led initiatives that had flourished under the program. As Fatou entered the hall, Ibrahim Traoré, Burkina Faso's president, paused mid-step upon, seeing her. Emotion flooded his face. With quiet reverence, he walked toward her and extended his hand. "Welcome," he said, his voice unsteady with feeling. "You are living proof that what we are building here is bigger than ourselves. It is about legacy, about healing, and about hope." Fatou nodded, her throat tight with emotion. Holding an old, worn book that had belonged to her mother, she whispered, "My mother always believed this day would come." Inside the book, written in faded ink, was a single powerful sentence. "Knowledge is the greatest inheritance we can leave." President Traoré read the words with solemn awe. That single sentence struck him deeply. It was more than a mother's message. It was a declaration of purpose, a reminder that true transformation begins in the hearts and minds of people, and that even small acts of love and learning can ripple outward to create vast waves of change. When it came time for his official address, Traoré stood before a packed auditorium filled with farmers, students, elders, and dreamers. He looked out over the crowd, not as a politician, but as a fellow citizen. His voice rang clear and powerful. "Today we are not here simply to celebrate statistics or policies. We are gathered to honor those who, with their hands, hearts, and minds, have built this nation. You, each of you, are the true foundation of Burkina Faso." Then, turning his gaze to the cameras, he addressed someone thousands of miles away. "Mr. Obama," he said, fully aware that the former U.S. president was not physically present, but might be watching. "Your words moved me deeply. But know this, they were never just about me. They were about every man, woman, and child in Burkina Faso who wakes up every day determined to create a better future. Your message honored all of us." The audience broke into warm applause, and on the screen behind him, images began to flash. Images of farmers cultivating lush green fields, children reading books in renovated classrooms, and young scientists designing sustainable technologies using local resources. These were not just symbols of progress. They were the living embodiment of a movement. Fatou was then invited to speak. She hesitated at first, overwhelmed by the moment, but found courage in the weight of the book she held. "My mother always taught me to fight for my dreams," she began, her voice steady and proud. "And today, because of this center, I know I can make her dreams a reality too. I want to take what I've learned here and help our people grow. More food, protect our land, and stand tall in the face of any challenge." The room erupted in applause. President Traoré walked over and embraced Fatou warmly, knowing that this moment was the clearest measure of the initiative's success. A new generation rising not just with knowledge, but with purpose. The journalist watching from the sidelines returned to his notebook and, overcome by what he had seen, wrote the same words again. "Today in Burkina Faso, I saw the future of an Africa that values its history, honors its heroes, and builds bridges of dignity for all." Thousands of kilometers away in the United States, former President Barack Obama watched the broadcast live, visibly moved. During a later interview, he was asked once more about President Traoré. "This guy is something special," Obama admitted, pausing thoughtfully. He's showing the world that real leadership isn't about titles or power. It's about listening to your people and leading with humility, compassion, and vision. His words were widely shared, inspiring people across continents. They served as a powerful reminder that the smallest gestures of kindness, the boldest acts of integrity, and the deepest expressions of love for one's people can unite humanity across borders. Back in Burkina Faso, Traoré pressed on with his mission. During a visit to a remote village nestled in the countryside, he met a young girl named Mamadou. She approached him shyly, holding out a notebook and a bundle of pencils. "Mr. President," she said, her voice trembling with emotion, "this is for you. I wanted to show you that we are using what you've given us to learn and grow." Traoré knelt beside her, moved to his core. "You don't owe anything to us, Mamadou," he replied gently. "You are proving that when we give people the right tools, the right opportunities, they can change their world." And in that moment, under the bright African sun and surrounded by fields of promise, it became clear. This was more than a program. It was a movement, a future in the making.